My friends, it's the holiday season, and the Ukrainian General Staff said they needed 20,000 conscripts to maintain the combat ability of existing brigades, which are getting eroded by battle attrition. Fancy words to say they're replacing casualties and they need 20,000 replacements a month. But don't worry to fix that. Instead of Amazon packages delivered, in Ukraine you get Zelensky Prime, same-day mobilization summons sent straight to your door. I also salute the New York Times for watching my videos. I mean, look at that, it's an honor. Even the mainstream media is waking up to the fact that sacrificing entire battalions of Ukrainian Marines for river crossing operations across the Dnieper is pointless. Honestly, that's not even the worst part. As a matter of fact, it's the first time we witnessed the Ukrainskaya Armia retreating all over the front on such a scale.
Emotional damage!
Russian assault units are pushing out of Bakhmut. They're in the process of encircling 20,000 Ukrainians in and around Avdiivka. They're slowly rolling back the Ukrainian gains in the Robotyne salient. They're storming the stronghold of Novomikhailivka, which could open a wide flanking maneuver east of Vuhledar. And they're also increasing the pressure all along the Kupiansk front line. It's a disaster. Even King Arthur himself will not be able to pull Ukraine out of this mess. And just like Ukrainian retired Colonel Kevliuk told The Economist, tough decisions lie ahead for Ukraine. Number one could be the mobilization of 500,000 Ukrainians. Or it could be as painful as withdrawing from the Avdiivka cauldron, retreating from the Robotyne salient, thus throwing away all these sacrifices to even get there. But it will also certainly mean abandoning the bridgehead in Krinky. Welcome to History Legends, and here are the latest news of the Russia-Ukraine war. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. As you know, some of my Ukraine videos have been targeted with limited or no ads. So make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal to keep the show running. Thank you to everyone that has already helped. And welcome to the headquarters. Reality is that in the Khersonskom направление, or the Kherson direction like the Russians call it, the situation is just untenable for Ukraine. Russian artillery keeps bombarding the settlement of Krinky, and then is Russian aviation that joins the Bang Gang. Here you can see a thick FAB 1500 dropped on reinforcements meant for Krinky. A little bit over 100 Ukrainian Marines are said to be still present. Casualties are heavy, and to maintain the pace of the offensive, Ukrainians are now overloading boats with personnel and supplies. However, because of that, the boats are slow and fall prey to enemy drones. As you can see on these pictures from December 15th, it seems Ukraine is currently accelerating the training of its Marine conscripts at the 241st Training Center, most likely as replacements for Krinky, or perhaps for the folly of another amphibious operation. Due to logistical problems, a lot of the supplies are transported by foot across these muddy islands on the way towards Krinky. Despite Ukraine's Herculean efforts, according to the latest news, the Russian armed forces encircling Krinky have doubled down their armored attacks. Despite significant losses, the Russians have reduced the Ukrainian bridgehead in Krinky by another 300 meters on both flanks, and recaptured half of the forested areas. This is an older video, but a number of Ukrainian POWs can also be recorded. But if we take a look at the map, this means the Russians are very close to the last Ukrainian disembarkation sectors. After that mighty article from the New York Times, 2 days later the Kyiv Independent reported, Ukrainian soldiers storming eastern bank of Dnipro fear their mission is hopeless. And let's say some people got triggered. Why do you keep posting demoralization articles? So we have 4 battles to analyze: Novomikhailivka, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and the Kharkiv front. Let's start with Novomikhailivka. From an operational perspective, the Russian command tried to break the deadlock with a push along the Pobieda-Novomikhailivka sector. And that's how Russian assault units went on to attack that settlement at the end of September. After demining these fields for a week, armored units tried to dislodge the Ukrainians from these woods. Here is a sample of the battle. But this attack got bogged down. Or perhaps it was a diversion, because 1 week later, on the 11th of October, the Russians attacked from Salatke. As you can see on screen, the Russian force consisted of at least 3 armored columns, each composed of 1 tank and 4 BMPs. And let's say, essentially the Russians got stopped on this line. On top of that, for the north, the Russians could not dislodge the Ukrainians from a fortified farm nicknamed Zverinets, or the zoo. Now the Russian command only reopened this front in mid-December. The 20th Motorized Rifle Division was tasked to capture Novomikhailivka and Pabieda, while the 150th Motorized Rifle Division had to break through Marinka once and for all. On the 10th of December, Russian assault squads attacked through the fields east of Novomikhailivka and advanced 800 meters. During one such attack, this Russian squad captured 2 enemy soldiers left behind in a dugout. However, this push seems to have been a diversion. Man, the Russians are playing 4D chess, because then the Russians attacked from the south. And after 5 days of fighting, Russian units got a foothold on the southern outskirts of Novomikhailivka after rushing 1.6 kilometers in open ground. And we also know exactly how they achieved this thanks to this video. We see a column of 4 Russian armored vehicles pushing through this straight road, using the cover of a smoke screen. Also notice the 2 destroyed tanks, perhaps from a previous attack or even Ukrainian ones. Now, this axis of attack can be geolocated right here on the map. Then the video shows how Ukrainian drones are dropping grenades on a recently captured trench network occupied by a Russian squad, followed by the entire sector getting hammered by Ukrainian artillery. This event was geolocated right at this crossroad. Here are the 3 buildings we can see in the video, and the trench network would have been positioned right here. While all this was taking place, by the 13th of December, the Russians captured this stubborn forested position and pushed 2 kilometers like a wedge between Pabieda and Novomikhailivka. By the 19th of December, the Russians pushed some more troops right on the edge of the village. It's clear the Russians are about to launch the general assault on Novomikhailivka, especially after this Orthodox prayer, where they get a significant assault bonus. Now, in preparation of this assault, to soften up Ukrainian positions, they bombarded the entire settlement. Here you can see what a Russian artillery preparation against Ukrainian forces in the village looks like. And in this video, from another angle, we can see how 24 shells landed on that sector of Novomikhailivka within a couple minutes. If we try to geolocate this artillery strike, here's the main road, the follow-up V-shaped intersection, and here's the village with all the dachas. So according to all this, we can believe that the next step of the Russian army would be to push right in the center of the village and push from the east. Now 10 kilometers to the north in Marinka. Unlike what I told you in the last video, not all the settlement has been captured yet. There's still 800 meters left, and Russian infantry squads are still in the process of clearing the remaining buildings one by one. The fighting is difficult and gruesome. Some Russian soldiers found the following note written on the wall: "Whoever finds me, take care of my mother, sister and brother. Rudakov Roman Alexandrovich, city of Batyatsk." Roman would have turned 22 on December 26. Here you can see an archived video of him before he was sent to the front as part of the 103rd Regiment of the 150th Motorized Rifle Division. When headquarters lost contact with Roman's squad, another unit was sent forward to get back in touch with them. One of them said the following: "We went down to one of the basements, machine gun cartridges everywhere, and the 9 Russian soldiers of the squad, all KIA. The assault group was ambushed and fought until the last bullet." The Ukrainians fought extremely hard in order to regain control of Marinka. They launched an armored counterattack at the northern edge of the village. As you can see here, they advanced with 3 armored vehicles, which then disembarked infantry. But soon enough, the entire position got targeted by the Russians, and they all had to pull back. Now the goal of this entire Russian operation If successful, it would pave the way for massive Russian backshots on the logistic lines of Vuhledar. And if Ukraine abandons the stronghold of Vuhledar, the front line would move at least 10 kilometers. Bakhmut. The Battle of Bakhmut is so epic that Netflix is already working on a movie about it. I'm pretty excited. Now seriously, on the Bakhmut front, it seems Ukrainian units are abandoning their positions in tree lines as they fall back towards their closest villages. As you can see on the map, this would mean concentrating as many troops in Bogdanivka, Ivanivske, and Klishivka. The goal is to hold these fortified outposts as long as possible and delay a Russian assault on Chasiv Yar, which acts as the logistics center of the entire region. In this video, you can see a Russian fire team or some recon units progressing along a tree line. This means that some Russian units now got a foothold on the ridge overlooking Bogdanivka from the north. On the 18th of December, paratroopers of the 98th Airborne Division stormed the hilltop north of Hromove. And by the 20th of December, they're now rushing at full speed towards the eastern flank of Bogdanivka. And remember what I said. Lastly, they will most likely storm this hilltop in order to take control of these tree lines, from where eventually they can flank Bogdanivka. Whereas these guys right here, if they simply follow the ridgeline, they will also end up on the ridge north of Ivanivske. Everything indicates that the Battle of Ivanivske is imminent, because check this out. Since our last video, south of Bakhmut, Russian assault units are clearing this bastion from the remaining Ukrainian defenders. If we look at it from a 3D perspective, the Russians are using this forest to slide troops right into the rear end of the Ukrainian forces in Klishivka. Now, according to this video, we see some Russian soldiers in a trench, which we can geolocate right here on the map. So this is the point of view of the drone. You can see the dirt path and the same shape of the trench. Now it's obvious that the Russian objective is to control this high ground, and we can assume that most of it is now in Russian hands. Apparently, some of these assault detachments are part of a unit called Special Forces Siberia, composed of many former Wagner PMC fighters. Imagine if some of these guys actually stormed Klishivka in January 2023. I mean, these guys will know the area by heart. And I put an end to all this Summer and Krasbo nonsense. At the same time, it was reported that a number of Russian units managed to get a foothold on the northern part of Klishivka as well. Now all that was part of the foreplay, because a girthy penetration is happening north of Klishivka as Russian mortar crews unleash very precise suppressive fire. On the 18th of December, the 4th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade knocked out the Ukrainians from the dachas. We can confirm this because of the following drone footage. Here you can see a Russian drone guiding an entire assault platoon of roughly 25 men pushing into this residential sector. Oh my god, you see? The Russians are using meat wave attacks! No. Whereas a Ukrainian drone probably filmed the aftermath, where they guide artillery fire on multiple Russian fire teams as they run around from house to house. So if we look at the map, the Russian assault platoon was geolocated here, and then them getting shelled took place in this sector, meaning they clearly took hold of it, and by the 20th of December, the Russians had fully captured the Dacha area, meaning they're now only 800 meters away from the first houses of Ivanivske. That's roughly 8 football fields. Now sadly, it seems all the Ukrainians had available to stop the enemy was a small number of infantrymen in isolated dugouts. Here on the southwest corner of the Dacha area, you can see 2 Russian soldiers overlooking 5 Ukrainian POWs exiting from their dugout. Some Russian reports claim that in the last days, up to 70 Ukrainian soldiers surrendered in the Klishivka sector alone. Even more alarming, according to this article from Business Insider, Russia has 7 times more drones than Ukraine. This makes life very difficult for Ukrainian riflemen, as Russian drones constantly fly over their positions night and day to drop grenades or to guide artillery fire. Now that I think about it, I don't even think that Ukrainians will be able to hold Klishivka for that long. Avdiivka. On the 10th of December, it was reported that the Ukrainian command had transferred and concentrated more than 40 battalions from 8 different brigades to defend Avdiivka, roughly 20,000 men. It doesn't seem to be enough because on the 15th of December, Russian assault squads started storming Avdiivka proper from the Promka industrial zone they captured the week before. We know this because Ukrainian kamikaze drones were geolocated harassing Russian infantry in this sector. Meanwhile, near this wall I brought up last video, a Ukrainian drone recorded at least a dozen Russian fatalities covered in the snow. This confirms the geolocation I did, but we also discovered the heavy toll the Russians had to pay to capture this position. Now literally 500 meters from there, so right here on the map, we have the video of a duel between a Ukrainian M2 Bradley and a Russian BMP. Bradley's big loads forced the BMP to run away. Now jokes aside, I'm telling you, if Ukraine loses control of this 1.5 kilometer tree line, it's GG well played. That's why Ukraine is sending unit after unit to dislodge the Russians from there. And that's also why they're concentrating artillery fire on these tree lines east of Stepove. As an example on this satellite image, you can see all these shell craters in and around Stepove. Now as the Russians are pushing northwest of the railway, Ukraine continues to pull additional reserves towards the settlement of Novokalinove and Berdishi. From these latest attacks west of Krasnoorivka, we can believe the Russians want to take control of this area in between both train tracks. In this video, you can see another Bradley, the trademark of the 47th Mechanized Brigade, firing towards enemy units almost at point blank with M792 high-explosive incendiary tracer cartridges. Today I feel like in a GeoGuessr mode, so I think this firefight took place right here. We can see the field, the train tracks, and the wall covered by the forest. Fun fact, on December 19th, a Ukrainian T-64 was destroyed right here. Once again, in the video we can see the railway line and the 90-degree angle of this tree line. This would confirm the fact that the Ukrainians are not only sending troops south of Stepove, we could even say that they're trying to flank the village from the north. But in the end, Russian assault units ended up capturing these 4 tree lines, thus cancelling the latest Ukrainian counterattacks and sealing the fate of Stepove. As you've seen in the previous images, when properly used, the Bradleys can be extremely lethal. On the 13th of December, one of them managed to destroy a column of 3 Russian multi-purpose tracked IFVs on its own. Fun fact, in this video there is a tank pulling a damaged M2 Bradley to the rear for repair. This video took place west of Ocheretine, so we can believe that this entire northern sector is part of Ukraine's main supply route, MSR, and thus essential to hold Avdiivka. The Ukrainian command is also constantly ordering artillery fire on the seemingly infinite waves of Russian reinforcements. In this case, on the 16th of December, a column of 15 armored vehicles dropped off their infantry right on the contact line, so roughly 100 riflemen. Upon their return, they were intercepted and half the BMPs got destroyed or damaged. Meanwhile, on the western part of the battle, Russian units managed to secure this set of tree lines west of Svierne, and the second group managed to advance another 500 meters west of Vadiane. To be honest, this could be significant on a tactical level, because if the Russians achieve another such push, they could literally trap all the Ukrainians in this sector, and this pressure would simply force them to withdraw to better positions. So if successful, this could allow the Russian armed forces to create a double cauldron and all the problems this means for Ukraine. The Kharkiv front. Now remember in mid-August when I covered the dire situation the Ukrainian army was facing in Kharkiv Oblast. Since then, the Ukrainian front has not collapsed, but it's evident that the Ukrainian command saw the threat of the Russian offensive and heavily reinforced the entire front line. The Russian goal has always been to get as close as possible to the city of Kupiansk. After attacks from this side seemed to have failed, the Russians stormed this part of the forest to get closer to Sinkivka, and Ukrainian troops started falling back to regroup inside the village. Now the benefit of having this entire forest is that the Russians can camouflage a huge number of assault formations from the Ukrainians. As preparation, the Russians launched multiple drones against Ukrainian targets inside Sinkivka. And that's how on December 14th, they restarted ground operations in the sector. In the following video, geolocated on the northern edge of the settlement, you can see a column of 9 Russian armored vehicles. In this frame, 1 tank is supporting 4 BMPs as they're disembarking riflemen into these houses. But surprise, surprise! There are Ukrainian soldiers ambushed inside. One of them can be seen with a man-portable anti-tank weapon, and he fires at an enemy vehicle at point blank. The BMPs pull back at full speed and leave the infantry on its own. Meanwhile, further back, 4 armored vehicles of the same column got destroyed or damaged by Ukrainian artillery. Sometime after, a Russian squad tried to bypass this tank graveyard, but the moment they got into these woods, they got hammered by incoming shells of the 14th Mechanized Brigade. So yeah, the Russians got a bloody nose on that one. 3 days later, the Russians tried their luck again. As you can see here, 2 BMPs with 5 to 7 descent stormtroopers on top are seen driving by the vehicles lost earlier. 2 rounds with extreme precision fell right on top of these vehicles, and you can imagine the result of the riflemen that were sitting on top of these BMPs. It seems the Russians are also seeing increasing actions towards Ivanivka. For some time now, Russian assault squads tried to creep their way forward in this direction, which was partly successful. On the 13th of December, a Ukrainian T-64BV was destroyed by anti-tank weapons right at this position, meaning the Russians are only 500 meters away from the first houses of the village. But since these attacks didn't really lead anywhere, the Russian command attempted a wide flanking maneuver from the north, I think to get access to this ridgeline overlooking Ivanivka. There was this Russian assault platoon of roughly 30 stormtroopers that had concentrated in this sector in column formation, when a Ukrainian drone appeared and decided to crash the Igloo Fest. 2 days later, on the 12th of December, the Russians returned the favor and struck this Ukrainian platoon as they rotated out of their entrenchments. Essentially, the Russian assault on Sinkivka and Ivanivka could put immense pressure on the Ukrainian flanks and force them to withdraw 6 kilometers to better positions, and perhaps even start this siege of Kupiansk. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to support my work, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal. The links are in the description below.